Going live, another live streaming episode of Money Study Group. It is Tuesday, 10 a.m. Today is, what is today? The 22nd of June. Happy birthday, Carissa. My daughter is turning 25. No, I'm not even sure how old she's turning. Not 25. Anyway, she's a little older than that. Welcome, everybody. I know you can hear me, Gunner. Anybody else hear me? Everybody's getting signed in. Let me make sure everyone is admitted. We'll give everybody who's joining a minute or two late. We'll give till 5 minutes after to get started. We're going to talk about consumerism today, what it is, how it works, and why it's the number one enemy of your future, your family, and your financial plan. So I'm going to tell you some stories today, or a story anyway, about a student. He wasn't a student in our course, but he was a student. And I'll share his story today to set the table as we get into the topic of consumerism. All right, good morning, Jenny and Ray and everyone else. So we've got a couple of minutes before we actually start. And as usual, I want to make sure that those of you who are here, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat, and I will answer those as we go. Sorry, I'm still congested and kind of goofed up. My grandson Caleb went to the doctor again yesterday. He came back all bouncing and happy, as if that's the way he's been. He's been going back and forth from feeling really nasty to just being a normal little 3-year-old. So, and I'm doing the same thing. I go from being happy and dancing to feeling pretty nasty. I think it's a cold, but anyway, sorry you have to put up with it again. I'm working on it, taking every kind of over-the-counter medicine I can find. All right, I don't see any questions, just good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning back to you. We had a little storm last night, apparently. I live in Friendswood, and we got a little bit of it. So I got a few emails this morning from students who were unable to connect, wanted to submit their assignments, and apparently were not able to do that. So hopefully this morning things cleared up sufficiently, and those students were able to jar themselves from a very sound sleep and submit the assignments, which were due by 10 a.m. Something I noticed this week, by the way, in terms of assignments being turned in, we offer extra points if you turn your assignment in by Friday at 3 p.m. Many of you took advantage of that remarkable opportunity, and I appreciate that, and I hope you do too. You should have gotten some extra points. You did get some extra points, unless you were really missing something in your assignment, in which case you got a reply saying, hey, go ahead and do this, update that. And anyway, so turning your assignments in early has lots of benefits. One benefit is you don't get stuck the night before the assignment is due if there happens to be an electrical storm. And you know, one of the reasons this policy is in place, one of the reasons that I provide extra points for turning your assignments in early, is because I know that the tendency is for most students, not all students, but most students wait until the last minute. The average student waits until the assignment is due, and so if all of your assignments are due on the same day, then you're doing all of your assignments at the same time. And so I'm trying to give you some incentive to pay a little more attention and provide a little bit more of your mental capacity, capital to these assignments, just so that you have a little extra time to think about them and experience a few of the principles and lessons we're trying to teach in personal finance. So I'll do whatever I can to try to manipulate you into learning as much as you can about personal finance during our short time together. We have so much to cover and so little time to do it. And it is now 10:05, so everyone who is going to be admitted to this Zoom meeting has been admitted. Everyone else gets to watch either in the live stream on Facebook or YouTube, which should be streaming now. So leave your comments below. Let us know you're here, you're watching, and yeah, I read all those comments, by the way. I don't always reply, but I do read them and I appreciate them. So if you're watching on Facebook, welcome. If you're in YouTube, welcome. If you're watching later, my future welcome to you goes out now. So we are going to talk about consumerism, and I want to highlight a little bit about the assignment, that 2 assignments that you will have this week, but mostly you're just going to just do a little bit of reading and learning and thinking about consumerism. We live in a culture of consumerism, and I don't know what that means to you. I'm very curious to know, what do you think of the idea of consumerism? What do you think it is? How do you think it works? When I was in college, it was very different. That was like 100 years ago, and we didn't have the internet, and I didn't have a credit card in college. I didn't have a debit card, but I did have an ATM, one of those cards that you could stick into a bank machine and get cash out. And it turns out that was a very dangerous thing. I got married while I was in college, and one of the most difficult things in our relationship was when I would go to the cash machine and I would take out cash. The cash machine, it was called an ATM, automatic teller machine, I think. I don't even remember for sure what ATM stands for, but my wife at the time would balance our checking account. And so I don't know if you ever do that, balance your checking account. What I found when I started teaching this course many years ago is I assumed that one of the things I would teach students is how to balance their checking account and how to stay current and not get NSF, that's not sufficient funds, fees and charges. But what I found out in the very first day of teaching, as I started talking to students, they didn't even, nobody balanced their checking account. Nobody had a checkbook. Nobody wrote checks. It was new to me because that's what I grew up with, and that's the way it has been. And I still occasionally write checks. Mostly now my checks are digital, electronic. They're transmitted without me even seeing them. But anyway, the times have changed. And so obviously the way that a lot of students today, probably you, keep track of the balance in your checking account is you open an app and you look at it and you see how much money is in there. And sometimes many of you will go and look and see what transactions have hit your bank account. Well, in the old days, try to put yourself back into the old days with me for a minute. Because back in the old days, when I was where you are and I was married, my wife would have to do that, but she did it with a piece of paper. Instead of opening an app on her phone to see what the balance was instantly, that wasn't available. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have any kind of mobile phones. We had phones with wires. But it was a very important part of our financial habits and financial routine, if you will, to balance the checkbook, because we had all these checks going out that we actually wrote, put a stamp on them, stuck them in the mail, and they got sent out. So I know that sounds very old school. It was, but at the time it was the way things were done. And so we didn't have any credit cards at the time. My wife had a credit card, but it was one that her dad gave her, and her dad passed just before I met her. So she had this credit card from home, and she never used it. She wanted to prove to her parents, and her dad had passed, but her dad really trusted her, and she wanted to prove to him that she could get along without using his credit card. But it was there as an emergency. So when we got married, we're writing all these checks. My wife mainly pays the bills. She writes the checks, and I make the money. And then I would happen to stop by the bank and go to the ATM and take out $100 like this young man is holding there. And so I would take out cash. Now imagine if you're sitting at home in the apartment, or we lived in a mobile home at the time, and you're balancing the checkbook and everything's good. This check cleared, this bill got paid, that bill got paid. So far everything's working out according to your budget. You know how much money you have to spend. You know how much money you have coming in, pretty close every week. Jim is going to make this much money every week. I'm going to make this much money. My wife's name is Connie, so Connie would know, here's what my check is going to be, here's what Jim's check is going to be, and here's our rent, here's our water bill, here's our electric bill, here's how much we spent at the grocery store, this is how much we spent eating out at Sip and Flip, which was our favorite little hamburger joint. And so by the end of writing all those checks, she's keeping track of it in the checkbook, watching the balance go down, 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 knowing that until we get paid, we really have no money. But then she gets the statement from the bank, and she's reconciling her bank statement with the ledger she kept in the checkbook. And so while she's doing that, she's looking at this statement, and she sees on this statement from the bank that Jim went to the bank or went somewhere and took his little card out and stuck his card into a machine and pulled out some cash money. And Jim didn't tell Connie that he did that. Maybe it was $100, maybe it was $50, maybe it was $200. Maybe Jim decided to buy a new toy because Jim liked to buy toys, and Jim would make pretty good money and felt like he deserved to have these toys. And so as a new married couple trying to figure out how is life going to work, one of the biggest conflicts of all entered our marriage, and that was the conflict of financial planning and budgeting. And the challenge was with us, I think, very similar to the same challenge everyone faces when it comes to managing money, is our needs, wants, and wishes can be different. And my priorities were very selfish and very short-sighted, and my ability to be considerate of my wife and her work in the checkbook in the financial department was very limited. And so we were very young. I was very stupid, and that hasn't changed much over the years. But the thing that has changed is, well, lots of things have changed, but one of the major things that have changed is the speed in which you can be up to date on your financial situation. Back then, though, it was a checkbook and this piece of paper, and believe me, we got in lots of difficult conversations that I don't have time to share, but they make pretty interesting stories. And so when we think about our marriage in the beginning, it's this story that I'm about to tell you. It reminds me a lot of us. So the checkbook, though, the checkbook and the balancing of the checkbook it's a good framework for the same thing you're going to have to do this week, because even though you have instant access to where your money is, you still have this kind of idea of creating a budget, creating a template of how much money is coming in and how much money is going out, and that is a very important, basic, essential element of your financial plan today, tomorrow, 20 years from now. And the better you get at that, the more success you will have in growing and building wealth. So today we're going to talk about just consumerism. I want you to start to think about, and really over this week as you do your homework assignment, I want you to think about the cost of consumerism. So consumerism, to me, it's part of our culture. It was part of our culture back when I was in college and when my dad was in high school. Every kid wants stuff. You grow up wanting stuff. In America, we want stuff for Christmas, for our birthday, and it's like today, more than ever, it seems we have this culture that is so driven by stuff and having more stuff. And a lot of times that stuff is just not really important. It's not really going to last, but it's stuff that we really want. And if we have money, we buy it. And it's so much easier in our culture of consumerism to believe the messages that we hear constantly. It used to be commercials, but now it's like everybody you watch on YouTube, everybody I listen to, podcasts and everyone else, they always want to tell me as they're in the middle of their story, oh, but first let me tell you about this great ABC product, and you just can't avoid it. Everybody is trying to sell you something, and as if you need to be sold stuff, because we typically already want stuff. We see stuff, we want stuff, we like stuff, and that's how most of us are. So if you're fortunate enough, like I am, to be partnered with someone in life, my wife is very frugal, but consumerism is still one of those things that has challenged our marriage and our family, and so it's something that you're going to have to deal with. And when you stop to think about consuming, the cost of consuming, the cost of just constantly having the desire to buy something, if you could put a number on that, if you could actually isolate the cost of consumerism, you would find that it is the biggest thing that you face in terms of financial planning. So when I was in college, I read this book called The Millionaire Next Door, and it was a great book, but it was the first time in my life, the message was really about these people who were called millionaires who lived next door, but they didn't look like millionaires. You would never know they were millionaires. You would never know that they were wealthy, because they didn't live like they were wealthy. The basic idea of the millionaire next door is that to become a millionaire, you have to basically live like you're not a millionaire, like just live in a frugal way. And that's what these people that were highlighted in this book, The Millionaire Next Door, that's what they did. That was their story. The researchers, Danko and I can't remember the other guy, I should know, but there were two researchers, two co-authors, and they just did research about these people who were millionaires, who lived next door, that you would never know were millionaires. It's a great book, and it made me realize that, that makes all the sense in the world. Is if I want to build wealth, I can't go buy everything new that I want. Everything that I want, I can't buy. And they highlighted the reality that the cost of consuming, just the taxes that you pay on all the stuff that you buy and the maintenance. And I could tell you story after story about my friends and my community and myself of just the cost. So for example, I just think about my driveway. If I think about my house and my property and all the vehicles I have, so not just my driveway, but my house. I did a little video with my grandson this week. We went to Jellystone Park, and it's a beautiful place in Kerrville, Texas. And I took I gave him this little electronic motorcycle, and so I made a great video of him learning how to drive it up and down hills and rocks, and so he's 3. He's just barely learning how to drive this thing, and it's a lot of fun watching him learn. But that's a vehicle, and so I bought that for Caleb. But I started looking around the house at all the wheels that we have just in our house, from bikes and tricycles up to, a riding lawnmower, a John Deere riding lawnmower, a Goldwing motorcycle. There's 2 Lexus vehicles in our driveway, and then there's this big 30-foot Winnebago that I have a cover for in our driveway. So that's a lot of stuff when you think about tires, maintenance, batteries, oil changes, insurance. The list goes on and on just for the stuff that has wheels on it. So I have a lot of friends who have boats, and they have campers, RVs, and those campers and RVs aren't stored at their house. They pay storage on them. So just start to think about all of the costs that are associated with all of the things that you buy that you probably maybe don't need. Like a lot of the things we have, we don't really need, but we sure do. And we enjoy some of them, and some of them just end up junk. The point is, being a consumer is expensive. So when I started teaching this course, I want to tell you a story about, hold on, I've got somebody trying to enter and they keep popping up. So Anthony, you're late. The only reason I'm letting you in is because you keep popping up on my screen. So when I started teaching this course, I was all excited about teaching personal finance. And one of the most important lessons I wanted to teach was the three laws of personal finance. And the first law is the law of spending and saving. Spend less than you earn so that you can save more for what matters most. And I hadn't even taught the class yet, and I was standing in line at this Firestone, and I met this guy named Billy. Billy had this truck, F-150 pickup truck, and we got to talking, and I got to know him a little bit. And so this is Billy and Sally's story. Billy walked into Firestone that day because he needed to buy some tires for this really cool truck. I mean, it was an F-150. I don't know what you know about an F-150, but I'm a car guy. I paid for my college by becoming a master mechanic, and I worked as a mechanic to pay for my college, and that was kind of a great way to pay for college. And I enjoyed my work. I worked hard. I went to school full-time, and I worked full-time, and I got married and had a child, and all in college. So it was a very crazy, full, busy life. But when I met Billy, he was living with his folks, and he was working at a marathon plant. He'd graduated from San Jac with a technical degree, and he was working at a marathon plant, which I had worked in at one time, so we had something in common. Plus, he had this F-150. He was pretty proud of it. He bought it from his uncle, got a really good deal, and needed some tires. He had this coupon to buy tires, so that's what he was doing at Firestone. And he's standing there, and we're getting to know each other, just chatting. And then Sally, the sales lady, walks up, and Sally really caught both of our attention because she was a very professional salesperson. And she started talking to Billy about what he needed, his truck, and she knew that he had this coupon to buy these tires that were on sale, but she wanted him just to think about the possibility of maybe doing something with the truck that would transform the way it looked. And what I saw happen right in front of my eyes was consumerism started to play in, because Billy he was motivated to listen to Sally for reasons that went way beyond the tires on his truck, if you know what I mean. And so she was talking to him about things that had nothing to do with fuel efficiency or safety or performance or any of the things that just a really good old-fashioned solid tire would do to your pickup truck. It was more about how are you going to look in that pickup truck, and how is this going to make you feel. And she really played all that really well, to the point where Billy, who came in to buy 4 tires for his F-150 pickup truck, how much do you think it would cost to buy 4 tires for an F-150 pickup truck? I'm just going to give you a minute to see if anybody's got any ideas. Now, this was more than 10 years ago, but tires are tires, right? How much do you think, even then or now, doesn't matter, if you had an F-150 pickup truck, how much would a tire cost? Anybody got any idea? Are you guys all watching Facebook? Oh, 600, Ray, thank you. 600, that's like $150 per tire. That's a good guess. It's actually kind of low, but let's say that he had a coupon and they were on sale. 600 would be a really good price. So I paid $800 for my Lexus, much smaller tire, okay? And by the time I paid for the balancing and the new stems, the stem that and the road hazard, what else is there's just the fee to get rid of the tire. Once you put all that onto the bill, it was over $800. So $600 for a Ford F-150, much bigger tires, probably pretty on the low side. Anyone else have a guess? Ray says 600. I'm just for the tires now. Nobody's guessing. 250. Hey Evan, 250 for 4 tires? Dude, come on. Is that you paid $1,200 for 4 tires on your Tacoma, Anthony? That's a lot closer to what I would guess. So, and that was a few months ago. So Evan, look around, buddy. If you can buy 4 tires for $250, you are driving a Tonka truck. That means a toy truck, probably like what Caleb may be driving. So $1,200 is pretty close. But what happened is, because Billy was listening to Sally. Sally was a professional salesperson who had all of the skills of a professional salesperson, in addition to the, well, let's just say that Billy noticed she was quite attractive. And so she had this way with Billy that was just fun to watch. So not only did Billy he didn't go there to buy tires and rims, but that's what Sally suggested. Look at these rims. So now if you think about the whole package, it's not just the tires, it's not just the rims, but Sally had Billy, understand that you really need to get an alignment on your vehicle so that those tires will last, which is right. That's true. That's a very good point. As a master mechanic, I would absolutely suggest that you have your front end, your chassis, all of the parts on your vehicle, you need to have them checked to make sure that everything works, so that it's not loose, so the tires don't wear out. So by the time that was all said and done, how much do you think Billy was actually spending on those 4 tires, the repairs that he needed, the lifetime alignment, and the rims that made his truck look fantastic? How much do you think Billy would have spent on that kind of package? All of it all together. So Anthony, if you spent $1,200, so yeah, close to $4,000, it was actually closer to $5,000. But it was a big chunk of money. It was kind of interesting to watch. And again, remember, I was getting ready to teach this course on personal finance, and so I had this little interaction with this young man, and I'm thinking about, what is the challenge here? What is it that I can do to teach you? What can I teach you that will make a difference, that will move the needle for you? And I have all this information because I'm a certified financial planner, and I could go really deep in all the personal finance stuff that you could ever want to learn. But the truth is, none of that really matters if you don't understand the number one challenge in your life is this challenge of living in a culture of consumerism, and the fact that you, like me, like Billy, like everyone around us, we are all susceptible to being a consumer, someone who just needs more stuff, more and more stuff. And if we don't get a handle on that disease of consumerism, if we don't get a handle on that, then we're going to be very limited in terms of the success we're going to have managing our money, especially if we have a goal like becoming a millionaire by the time you're 50. If that's your goal, or any goal like that, will be impacted to the extent that you don't learn to understand and recognize and be aware of this thing called consumerism, and how it will cause you to make decisions in the short term that are really not going to help you in the long term. That's true about your future. It's true about your family. If you decide now or in the future that you want to do like I did and have a family and have a marriage, have a significant other person in your life where you share the chore of managing money together, it's so much easier to do together. You can do twice as much if you do it together, but it takes a whole lot of commitment, and this thing called consumerism becomes the enemy of your relationship, because you both have different needs, wants, and wishes. And so today's lesson, this week's lesson, is really designed to help you focus on this issue of consumerism and how it affects you and how you interact, how your choices and your behavior is driven by this culture of consumerism that we live in that invades every part of our life. So Billy and Sally ended up getting together, and their story is very interesting, and I would love to tell you. In fact, when we're together in a classroom, it's so much fun to tell this story because I ask a lot of questions and I make sure everyone's answering questions, and that's really hard to do in an online setting, so you don't get the story the same. But suffice it to say, part of the story of Billy and Sally in this one transaction, it sets the table for the assignment that you will do next, called the Credit Crush assignment. And so in this assignment, in this transaction rather, Billy spends nearly $5,000. That's on one credit card, that's one transaction, but it doesn't stop there. Billy and Sally decide that it makes sense for Billy to move out of his mom and dad's house and to get an apartment so that Sally can move in with him, and they become an item. They eventually get married and they start to have kids. But early on, what happened is Sally and Billy just met, and Sally helped Billy understand how much better he would look if he had better wheels under that truck. And it was an expensive transaction, but the whole idea was based on the fact that Sally convinced Billy that if he bought those tires today, he would have 6 months same as cash. Do you know what that means? If you go into a store and you make a commitment to buy something that you don't have the money to buy, you can use this thing called credit. And so that was part of the deal, was Billy could use credit, and Sally helped him understand you would not have to pay any payments for 6 months. So you could just, within 6 months, you could pay this off and you'll have no interest, no payments, nothing. And Billy was making good money living with his folks, and that was actually doable. It was actually something he could do, and that's what he convinced himself he would do, is to pay it off in 6 months with no interest. But yeah, Anthony says, if I don't pay, it's more than twice the original price. It's more than twice the original price. And if we were in class, I would show you the math, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to let you see it yourself when you do your homework assignment, when you go into your financial planning portal, and you're going to have to do this Credit Crush assignment, and I'll show you how to do it. But you're going to get to play with the numbers, and you're not going to play with Billy's numbers. You're going to play with your own numbers. But I'm going to set it up, help you set it up, so that you can see that, like Anthony said in our chat, that if he didn't pay it in 6 months, he's going to pay more than double. Well, it's significantly, exponentially more than double, and you'll see that in your own financial plan if you decide to take the route most traveled. If you do what most people do, you buy the thing, and you think you're going to pay it off in 6 months, but you don't. You think you're going to have a low interest rate, but you miss a payment, and the interest rate goes up, and it keeps going up. And your payment that you want to make, the minimum, because it's so low, that minimum doesn't really go up that much, and you keep making that minimum payment, and your interest just keeps growing and growing and compounding and growing. And that's how they get their money in your pocket. That's how the credit industry and consumerism work together, so that the things that you think you really have to have, that you don't have the money for, you can use a credit card and you can pay a lot more than twice what it's worth. And that's what Billy did in this scenario. And so again, if we were in class, I would be walking through the actual numbers of his payments and showing you how they grow. And what usually happens at this point in the lesson, if we were in class together, is you start to see how much it costs to use credit to be a consumer, to buy things that you don't really have the money for. And when you start to see how it works, how they get your money, and how much it costs to use credit, you start to become a little bit angry. And that's a good thing, because it's like a wake-up call, which is the whole point of this week's lesson, to wake you up and help you see the immense cost of consumerism when you buy things that you can't really afford and you put them on credit because it's so easy to do, and you fail to recognize, because you're not paying attention to the numbers, how much that's costing you, how much that's stealing from your future, how much that's limiting your options and your choices for down the road, and how much it's just destroying your financial plan in terms of the goals that you have for yourself for the future. And so that's the whole point of this week's lesson. The focus is consumerism, and the collateral is the credit card, the ability to buy things that you don't have the money to buy, because the credit industry loves to take your money. And they love to use your inability to control your own impulses to buy stuff, which, trust me, I get that. I like stuff. And the cost is incredible, especially if you're using credit. Even if you're not using credit, though, just like the example I gave you about my driveway and my house and all the wheels, all the things that have wheels on my one property at 1402 Sunset, if you take the cost of all of that, including the taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, it's just crazy how much it costs to have that stuff, just to have that stuff. That doesn't even take into account the house, the insurance, the taxes. Yeah, I need a roof over my house, but the point is, every time I buy something else, there's an added cost, because consuming is expensive. So the point is, just like in the Millionaires Next Door, if you learn to live on less, you'll find that you have so much more for the future, which just means you can have more peace in your life, more options, more choices, more flexibility, less stress, less anxiety, less pain from the pressure of not having enough to do the things you have to do. So that's the whole point of this week's lesson. So Anthony says, credit cards use cash back to get you to spend more money. They got me like that with a Chase Freedom card. So Anthony's asking, can I explain how they use cash back and points to get us to spend more? Yeah, I can give it a try. So I use this is one of my favorite cards. I'm not going to show you the number, but it pays 2%. So it pays me I spend this is maybe too much information, but I spend like $100,000 a year on this card. I literally do. And they pay 2%. So what's 2% of $100,000? That's $2,000. And that's why I use this card. Now, I gave up another card that I really, really liked. It was a card that paid me not cash back, but it gave me points for buying airplane tickets. It was a Southwest Rewards card, and I really liked it. And I got free travel, and it was cool. I paid for all my travel that way. I even got to the point with that card where if I spent enough money on that card and bought enough things, they would offer these things, like if I would use their card for rental cars, for air travel, for hotels, if I would use their card, then I would get this companion pass, which means every time I bought an airplane ticket, I'd get another one free for my wife. Whoa, that was so cool. Now, that would be a really good deal if my wife traveled and liked to travel, but I traveled a lot more than my wife, and she didn't, she couldn't travel because she was a teacher. So the point is, I spent a lot of extra money one year and got her the companion pass, and we went on like 2 trips, and it wasn't a good investment, but it was a good excuse for me to spend a lot of money. That's just one story, one example for me, but there are literally millions of stories out there of, hey, if you'll spend this and go on this vacation, you'll get these extra points. You'll get a 20% discount. It's crazy. It reminds me of a story I heard when I was a kid about this woman in New York City who was she was such a really frugal, great shopper. Like, this woman knew how to save money. She was a super expert shopper at saving money. And it was a cartoon, and it was a picture of this woman who was really yelling at a taxi cab driver who just passed her. She needed a taxi to go 2 miles in New York. I don't know where she was going, but she was going to a store that had a 20% off sale on a brassiere. So the moral of the story was she was going to save like $1.50 on a new brassiere. She's going to pay $12 on a tax ride back in 1970. Anyway, I remember that when I was a little kid, and it just made a lot of sense to me that what you're saying, Anthony, is they use these tricks, these marketing tricks, to give you something so that you'll spend more money. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like consumption. Being a consumer, it's a very expensive game. And just like this woman who's standing there waiting for a taxi cab so she can pay, what would the taxi cab be today? I mean, we'd use Uber today, but it was a taxi cab, which is a lot more expensive in New York City, to go, a mile or two away to buy something that was on sale, and she's going to save a few dollars. Anyway, so yeah, that's the game. And if you stop and think, and this is what I want you to do, I want you to stop and think and look around and start to see all of the ways that consumerism is impacting and influencing your life, your choices, and your finances especially. So just start to learn that, start to be aware of that, because if you fail to recognize that you are a consumer, you have the disease, you can't avoid it, we all do, and it is a disease. It's a disease especially because we don't see it, we're not aware of it, we think we are aware of it, but it really requires diligence for us to start to push back on consumerism. And if you make that your lifestyle choice, instead of your lifestyle choice being the normal lifestyle choice in America, where you get to have everything you deserve to have, everything you want to have, if you choose that alternative lifestyle and push back on consumerism, you'll find that the road ahead for you in terms of financial freedom is so much more easy to attain. It really is. And so my hope for you in this lesson, in this week, is that you pay attention to that, and then I'm going to show you the nuts and bolts and the reality of how it works in a real financial plan when you start to take these purchases, these credit accounts, and you start to attack them with a real sense of purpose and with a really effective strategy. So that's what you're going to learn in the Credit Crush assignment portion. You have 2 assignments again this week. One is just to learn a little bit about consumerism and take a quiz and tell me what you learned. The next one, though, is to do some work in your financial plan so that you build these 3 extra components in your financial plan. You're going to assume. Let's walk through that real quick. So you're going to have to do some research. This has been part of your part of the game plan all along, but I want you to research for your financial future. I want you to assume that you're going to graduate and get a job. You need to have a pretty good idea what kind of income you would have if you get the job that you want to get after college. So you've all done a great job answering the question. If we fast forward the clock 5 years, what kind of progress would you need to see in your life to feel, well, what would need to happen in your life for you to feel really good about your progress? And a lot of you have said you'd have a good job. You'd have, you'd be starting to buy a house, you'd have a car, you'd have transportation, living, a roof over your head, and a job. That's a great start. So now I want you to imagine yourself into the future after you graduated and start to put some numbers to it in your financial plan, which starts with how much are you going to be making? What kind of income do you think you're going to have based on the degree that you're in now at the University of Houston? So that's number one. After you graduate, what kind of income will you have? In one of the videos in your money study group, I make the misstatement, I say after you retire, but I'm not talking about after you retire, I'm talking about after you graduate. What kind of income will you have after you graduate? You need to know that number. Again, it's based on your major, it's based on the industry that you've chosen. And then another question you're going to have to answer is, what's the percentage of your income spent on housing costs? So that's just a general number, but I want you to do some thinking. What is a percentage of your income that should be allocated to buying or either paying rent or buying a house? You need to figure that out. So you're going to do some research this week. And what are the basic categories needed in every household budget? And what are the average costs for each of those categories? So starting with housing, obviously, that's the one you're going to do a little research on to figure out what is the normal percentage of your income that should go to housing. You could Google that in just a couple minutes. But I want you to not just Google it, I want you to think about it. I want you to kind of put yourself into a situation where you're actually creating a workable, effective budget based on what's real in the world you're going to live in after you graduate. So same with utilities, clothes, taxes, your phone. I don't know how much you pay for your phone, but I'm assuming that about half of you don't pay for your phone. Your parents do. Believe me, I know about parents paying for things, but your phone cost, your internet, your cable, all of those costs are part of your budget, and you need to think about what they're going to be. If you don't know what they are, if you don't know how much cable costs, if you don't know how much internet costs or rent or electric or water or taxes or any of those things, that's okay. You have a great resource. It's your parents. It's the people who are actually paying those costs right now in the house that you're living in. And if you're living in your parents' house and they're not charging you rent, that doesn't mean it's free. It means they're not charging you for it. They're paying it, and your job this week is to do a little research and figure out what is the rent, how much is the electric bill, how much does the water bill cost, what does internet cost, where do we get internet, what about cable, what about the phone? All of these things are going to be your responsibility, and I want you this week to do a little research to figure out what is the cost for you to live. Even if you're not paying it, that's okay. You still need to have a budget in your financial plan that shows and reflects what it will cost you to live. So that's that. And then we're going to take that and turn it into, once you build that into your financial plan, and I'll show you how to do that. I'll do a little tutorial in Money Study Group. But once you do that, I want you to go in and add 3 more pieces of data to your financial plan. 1, you're going to buy your dream house. 2, you're going to buy that car you always wanted. And I'm not telling you to go buy the Lamborghini. Like, if I could drive one car for 1 hour, it would be the Lambo. But I certainly wouldn't even consider buying the Lambo, and I don't want you to go put that into your financial plan, okay? Even though the Lambo or the Tesla or whatever might be your ideal, fun, cool car if you had all the money in the world. But I want you to think about your life, your vision, your values, your purpose. What are your goals, and what vehicle would you put into your life that makes sense? And then tell me why you chose that vehicle, and then plug it into your financial plan. So that's number 2. Number 3 is just go out and spend some money. This is fake money on a credit card like Billy did on his truck tires. Come up with your own shopping list, whatever it is. Maybe it's furniture for the house, whatever. Come up with an amount, and then come up with a credit card that, this is pretend, your pretend credit card expenses, to either start out your new household or whatever it is you want to do. Just be creative, but come up with an expense, $5,000 to $10,000. Figure out what kind of interest are you going to have to pay on that credit card. And you're going to have to do a little research, and you're going to plug that into your financial plan, and then I'm going to show you how to crush that credit, how to manage that credit, what are the best strategies you can apply, and I'm going to show you how they work, and you're going to be able to see, if you pay attention, if you want to understand how credit works, the financial planning software that you're going to be using to build your financial plan will show you, oh, that's exactly how it works, and how you can use better strategies to produce better results in terms of managing that debt. So I'm going to make that very easy for you, but you have to do the work to build the plan and to understand what we're trying to do in this assignment. We're trying to create a plan that has some realistic numbers in it, including a house, a car, and some credit card debt. And those need to be realistic. And then you have to have a realistic budget based on your life after you graduate, based on the income that you would expect to have after you graduate. So once we put all those things into the financial plan, into your financial plan, you start to have a realistic and a more complete model of your financial life in the future. And then you get to see how you might take some different strategies and apply those strategies to produce better results. So that's what we're going to do this week in your assignments, and that's what my hope is, that you walk away from this week with a whole lot more knowledge and experience in financial planning than you came into the week with. Now that may sound like a ton of work. It's really not going to take you that much time to do this. And if you're feeling a little stressed or a little anxious, just take one step at a time. Watch the videos and then go. It will take you just minutes to do this in your financial plan. And if you don't get it, if you have questions, just pay attention to the comments. There'll be students in GroupMe sharing what they learned, and I'll do some, if necessary, I'll do another tutorial video. But there's plenty of tutorial videos already available for you to watch for this assignment. It's a great assignment. It's really an eye-opening assignment. So I'm looking at the chat to see if there are any questions, any comments, anything that I need to address before we end this meeting. But it's been all about consumerism and credit, and this week's assignments will be focused on consumerism and becoming more aware of what it means to be a consumer in a culture of consumerism, and also dealing with credit, better strategies to deal with credit. So you're going to create some credit in your financial plan, and then you're going to attack that credit with some better strategies. So any questions? I don't see any questions, which is my cue to go blow my nose. And I'll see you guys soon. I hope you have a great day, great week, and I'll be grading the assignments that came in this morning. Final reminder, if you haven't already got the news that you get extra points for turning your assignment in early, Friday at 3 p.m., please do that for yourself and for me. I appreciate it. Thanks, Ray. Take care. Gunnar, it looked like you might have wanted to say something. Did I miss it? What was that? Just thank you? You bet, man. Take care. Good hearing you. I didn't get to see you, but good hearing you. Take care. All right, I'm going to end it right there.